So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Everybody, we're going to be starting right now the decoding Quranic Arabic. We're excited because we're really getting close to finishing, inshallah. So that's good news, and inshallah we'll be getting a lot of things wrapped up in order to start on learning how to do that actual interpretation and the actual interpretation and the actual decoding and making our own tafsir. So it might be really soon, so stay tuned, and inshallah you will be really excited to start on that. We're going to continue what we did last time, and today of course, we're going to be doing the part in where we're still doing the irregular verbs. And when we're talking about irregular verbs, we mentioned a number of things. We did mention that some things were going to be tricky, especially the noun of the verb. We did mention that a number of times. But the most important thing is that you've got a number of words. You've got a number of words. So the best way to do it is really by remembering it and memorizing it, just like you would memorize your own English or any other language and its vocabulary. So we'll be working on that, inshallah. So last time we did finish off at box number 24. At least we didn't finish the whole thing, but we did, I believe, until Aba and this word right here. So now we are taking another group, which is Ra'a, Yara, and Ra'in, and Ra'i. And this group, again, we're still in the irregular verb. So here you've got the irregular verb because it having that alif maqsura at the end, which is the vowel at the end. And here the verb Ra'a, and you could see that the present future tense is going to be by adding a ya in the beginning. So a ya in the beginning and taking out the hamza. So it becomes yara, right? That's a very irregular verb. And for the imperative, eri, it's actually eri, so I'm not sure why they just said put ra. It's actually eri for the imperative. It's actually eri. And the person that is seeing, or which is the verb here to mean to see, ra'in, ra, which is the person that's seen. And if we're talking about the noun of the verb or the masdar, it would be ra'i, opinion, ra'i. So ra'a would mean saw. Yara, seeing. Ari, not ara, but ari would mean let them see. Ra is the person seeing, and ra'i is basically an opinion, perspective. Remember, this whole verb is really centered around seeing and perspective. So here you're going to come about with the final noun of the verb is going to be ra'i, which means perspective. And by the way, when we talk about seeing, there is the actual seeing, which is using your naked eye, or it can also be ra'a, it can also be the metaphorical seeing, which would mean perspective or perception. So when somebody could say, well, the ra'i of a person is such and such, or ra'a, that they didn't have enough water. It could be just that they had water, but they evaluated the situation and considered that that was not enough. Did they not see the water? They did see the water, but based on their evaluation / calculation, they decided that, or came to see that it was not enough. So it can be also an ra'a to mean, or ra'a can be with really seen, an official scene. It could also be an issue of perspective. Ata, ya'ti, sha'a, yasha', and sa'a, yasu', ja'a, yaji'. Now what I want you to see here, I want you to notice that you've got these three words, that they have very similar ending, sha'a, sa'a, but when it came to the present tense, they really differed. So yes, sha'a, yasha'a, and sa'a, yasu, and yasu and su and sha. You could see that they're very, very irregular. They're not very similar. So that's a lot of details to say as to why, but the best way is to memorize it, especially for beginners, is to at least recognize and notice these patterns. So sha'a means to will, to will. Yasha is the present / future tense of it, would mean yasha, that they will or wish. Sha'a is the past, yasha is the future, sha, it's giving an imperative, will, and sha is basically the person that is willing something, and mashi'a is basically the decree or the willing of a certain thing. Mashi'a. Now the ساء. لا حذيفة تروحش على السوين. ساء. Sorry about that. My son wants to go on the swing set. ساء means to harm, or here they said to be evil. ساء means to harm or harmed, actually, since it's in the past tense. Yasu, harming, inflicting. Yasu, harming or inflicting. And of course, it's all going to be related to pain, related to unrest. The unrest and the pain can be an actual pain, can be an actual feeling, and can also be that person's not feeling any, or the person's feeling unrest, some kind of unrest. So then you're telling him, well, harm. And here it says sawit, which I find it really weird, and that's it's actually sayyit. It's actually, I'm going to write it right here, it's actually sayyit, because sayyit is harmful, because you're going to be saying sa'a, and musi is the person, musi is the person, musi, and saw is the saw or sayyit are going to be the noun of the verb. Sayyit is go or saw. What's the difference between saw and sayyit? Sayyit is harmful or bad, but so is more of, you're describing it, that the origin of it is actually evil. The origin of it is evil. So when we look at sayyid, saw, and the musi, they all come from the word and the root sa'a. Now, a very important thing to remember here is that when you speak about sa'a and sayyid and saw, etc., those actually appear frequently in the Quran. Those appear frequently in the Quran, and just as good and is also appearing frequently in the Quran. So both meanings, Jannah, Nar, Sayyid, Hasan, Khair, Shar, they always appear almost the same number of times, just to keep that in mind, because in the Quran there's always that patterning of the evil and the good that's happening around us. So saw and musi is the person. Musi, here is, let me write that down. Musi is basically the person. And ja'a means to, or came. Ja'a, came. Yaji is basically the future present tense. Coming. Jit, come. Giving an imperative. Ja'in actually is basically the person that's coming. Maji is the actual is the actual coming. So the noun of the verb of the actual coming. In other words, the person taking the stands, taking that presence to bring in and show up. All right. So let me just go to the other slide, and in the other sorry about that. It doesn't want to scroll down. Here we go. Now we're going to go for another type of an another type of an irregular verb, and that is with fa'ala. That is simply with what is called a shadda. Now it's very important to mention that when you would have a shadda, which is the upside down 3, when you would have the shadda, the shadda is an irregular part in it, but the shadda can have several meanings. The shadda can mean, one, the shadda can mean that there is a gradual process, can also mean that there is the entering in something, so they're basically entering in a certain place, and can also mean التشرب meaning that gradual absorbing something. So here, fa'ala, now here we could see that this is more of a clear pattern like the ones before. So what we're looking at, here's the actual verb. The shadda is in the middle. The shadda never comes in the beginning of a word. All right, never comes in the beginning of a word. What about what we see in the Quran? Sometimes they put the shadda in the beginning of the word in the Quran. That is for the tajweed purpose, not for a grammatical / conjugation purpose. All right, that's for the tajweed purpose. But linguistically speaking, in Arabic, there's no word that starts with a shadda. A shadda is basically this little tiny upside down 3 right there. Well, let's see, this one's getting easier now. Here we go. Fa'ala is the actual pattern for the root of it. Let's see how the future tense becomes yufa'ilu. Again, that pattern. فعل يفعل بدل يبدل بشر يبشر بين يبين زين يزين سبح يسبح. You see the pattern? سخر يسخر صدق يصدق عذب يعذب. Now you could see the pattern right there. علم يعلم قدم يقدم كذب يكذب. Now all these, that's the pattern. When you have a past tense with the pattern of فعل, that would mean that the future tense of it is going to be يفعل, or in that rhythm. As for the imperative form of it, which is the column right here, فَعِل, فَعِل, فَعَلَ, فَعِل is going to be the imperative form. بدل, بدل, imperative form. بشر, بشر. بين, بين. زين, زين. سبح, سبح. سخر, سخر. صدق, صدق. عذب, عذب. علم, علم. Here's that pattern, really clear and straightforward, nothing to it, and that would be the imperative form. As for the person that's performing that is performing that verb, مفعل, it's going to be in the pattern مفعل. So in this situation, بدل, مبدل. بشر, مبشر. بين, مبين. زين, مزين. سبح, مسبح. سخر, مسخر. صدق, مصدق. Now here we go. This is the pattern of the person that is performing the verb. Now let's go ahead and actually see the other final conjugation, which is the masdar. Let's see right there. بدل, تبديل, as in تفعيل. بشر, تبشير. بين, تبيين زين تزيين سبح تسبيح سخر تسخير صدق تصديق عذب تعذيب علم تعليم قدم تقديم كذب تكذيب. Really straightforward. Finally we got to something more of a fixed pattern and easier for us to recognize. Don't worry, it even gets easier and easier, I promise. So let's see what those words actually mean. بدل, to change or replace. So your بدل, replaced, so it's in the past tense, replaced or changed. And يبدل, replacing or changing. بدل, now you're giving an imperative, telling him to replace or to change. مبدل is basically the person that's replacing or changing. So let's see right here in the noun of the verb. This is the person, and this is the imperative form. Let's just remember that. This is the future, the future present tense. Sorry for the handwriting. When you're writing on the screen, it's a little bit tricky and challenging. Okay, so when you're writing here, you're talking about future and present. And this would be the past tense. The first one is the past tense. Well, let's just see what they mean. We did the first one. بشر, بشر, which means to bring about good news, to bring glad tidings. بشر, بشر, to bring about news. And in some of the ayat, it can mean just general news, regardless of whether it's good or bad, but just general news. And يبشر, so بشر would mean that the person was brought in some news. And of course, you know, the word bashar, bashar, which is the noun of verb, which would mean humans. All right. So I just looked at the word bashara, bashara, and it occurred in the Quran 70 times, even though here it actually said 48 times. Yubashiru, yubashiru is basically bringing glad tidings. So this is talking about future. Bashir, you're giving an order and telling him bring glad tidings or bring good news. Mubashir, mubashir is basically the person that is bringing good news and glad tidings. Tabshir, tabshir is basically the noun of the verb in where it's talking about the good news itself. Okay, so the same thing with when we're talking about mubashirat. Mubashirat, let me write that down. Mubashirat are basically the good news that you would be getting. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you all good news, inshallah. Let's see. Bayyana, bayyana is to clarify and clarified. Okay, so bayyana, when you're doing tabyin, which is what I'm doing right here, the noun of the verb, when you're doing tabyin, you're bringing clarification. So maybe clarification, clarified, clarifying, clarify, giving an order. Mubayyin, the clarifier, which is the person. Tabyin is basically the clarification. So you can see the clarification. All those words actually come from the same root. Zayyana, zayyana, here to make, to adorn, to make it more beautiful. Zayyana, to beautify. Yuzayyinu, yuzayyinu, clarifying, clarifying. Yuzayyinu, beautifying. My bad. Beautifying, yuzayyinu, beautifying. Zayyin, you're telling him to beautify, beautify. And muzayyin is the person that is beautifying. Tazyin or zina, tazyin is the actual, is more of the adjective and adverb tazyin, in where, you know, the actual beautification, the process of beautification. But zina is zina is beauty. Zina is beauty, or it can be, any adornment that you're adding, etc. So that would be zina. So the ayah that says غَيْرَ مُتَبَرِّجَاتٍ بِزِينَةٍ, that with that it's talking about when referring to women, that once as part of the hijab is غَيْرَ مُتَبَرِّجَاتٍ بِزِينَةٍ, that they won't be adding adornments, they won't be adding beautifications on themselves. And that's why scholars had different opinions on whether this is referring to the natural beauty or whether this is referring to any actual beautification you're adding. Maybe mascara, maybe necklaces, whatever it is. So that we're not going to make it into a fiqh class, but just on a side. Sabbaha. Sabbaha actually itself comes from sabaha. Sabaha, which means to swim, but sabbaha actually means to glorify. But I want you to see that pattern in where it actually comes from sabaha. And sabbaha is an addition, that extra shadda is an addition to it. So having that being said, when you do tasbih, that glorification, it is exactly like you're gliding in mentioning the names of in mentioning the names and glorifying the Lord Almighty. But sabbaha, to glorify Allah Almighty, or to glorify, it can be also to glorify anything. So it's the past tense. Sabbaha, glorified. Yusabbihu, glorifying. Sabbih, glorify. Musabbih, the person that's glorifying. Tasbih is the actual form of making, basically the glorification that you would be doing. Tasbih. Sakhara. Here it says to bring under control, which is to subjugate. So sakhara, subjugated, which means to bring under control, but it's just one word. Yusakhiru, subjugating. Sakhir, giving him an order, subjugate. Musakhir is basically the person that's subjugating or enslaving, I guess. Taskhir is subjugation. So it's basically the actual part of subjugating, I guess. Saddaqa, and it actually comes from the root sadaqa. All right, sadaqa. Just take out the shadda, because the shadda itself is actually a letter. So when you look at all these words, this isn't necessarily the root of it. So badala is the root. Bashara, bayana, zayana, sakhara, sadaqa is actually the root. So each one of these words, if you take out the shadda and you just make it into a fatha, you also have a word there that is pretty much the main substance for these words. So when we look at sadaqa, the actual root of it is actually sadaqa. Sadaqa. When you look at azaba, the actual root is azaba. The actual root of allama is alima, or alima. Qaddama, the actual root of it is qadima. Kadhaba, the actual root is kadhaba. All right, so here saddaqa, the actual root is sadaqa, and sadaqa means to be honest. But if you're saying saddaqa, now you're adding another part to it, which is that the person had trusted. All right, so just by adding the shadda onto the root sadaqa, the person was honest, but saddaqa means trusted, because they were honest, because they thought that they were honest. Yusaddiqu, believing. Wait a minute, I thought you said saddaqa means honest, or saddaqa means to trust or trusted. Yusaddiqu means trusting or believed, or believing. صدق, you're ordering the person to believe. مصدق, مصدق, the person that's believing. So how did we go from the root صدقة, which means that they were honest, to believing and all that? See, the whole thing in Arabic, it acts like the main base in where one is built upon another. One is built upon another, and then it forms an idea. It gives you the idea of it, and that's the beautiful, the conjugation of it, and how it grows, and that growing of it helps you see. Musaddiq, the person that is believing. Tasdiq, tasdiq is the actual belief. So tasdiq is belief itself. Okay, tasdiq. What about siddiq? It actually comes from it. Siddiq comes from the root sadaqa. But then siddiq would be another type of masdar, another type in where siddiq is basically the person that is continuously believing, and that is a saint. So a siddiq would be a saint, a siddiq would be a pious person. That would be the siddiq, that they're constantly living in faith. They're constantly living in honesty. They're constantly living in transparency. Beautiful. Adhaba comes from the root adhaba. Adhaba is more to sense, but adhaba, look at this. So let's see, let's do it again. Adhaba, when we say adhb, water that is adhb, in where it is pure. But when we say adhb, it is so pure that you are sensing it. But adhaba actually gives it a new meaning, to mean to punish a person. In other words, you're letting them feel a strong sensation, and the strongest sensation that you can get is pain. Unlike when you talk about the pleasureful sensations, they don't usually last long. So adhaba would mean to torture, adhaba, to torture, or actually tortured, sets in the past tense. Yu'adhibu, torturing. Adhib, you're asking him to torture. Mu'adhib is the person. Mu'adhib is the person that's torturing, and ta'dhib is torture. Ta'dhib is torture. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep such situations away from us. Allama, allama would mean taught. Allama, taught. But the word alima in itself, alima, means to know. Or alima, well, learned, knew. So it's in the past tense. But allama, remember, you're adding another. For, there is a qaida, there is a general rule in Arabic that says الزيادة في المباني زيادة في المعاني. Every extra addition to the original format, the original form of a verb, is actually adding an extra meaning. So right here, the additional meaning, just because of the shadda onto the root alima, now means allama, which would mean to teach. Alima means to, or knew, or to know, but allama is to teach. Yu'allimu is teaching. Allim, you're asking him to teach. Mu'allim is basically the teacher. It's the person. Ta'lim is basically the education. Teachings. Ta'lim, teaching or education. Qaddama comes from the root qadima. The word qadima, which means they came. قدم came. But قدم would mean something different, because قدم can mean to present. قدم can mean to present. Now remember, قدم would mean to come, but قدم would mean to present, to put forward. قدم, to put forward, to basically put somebody or something in on the spotlight. All right, يقدم, presenting or putting forward. قدم, you're asking him to put forward or present, to put forward or present. مقدم is the person, which is the presenter. تقديم, presentation. So you could see it growing. كذب comes from the root كذب. كذب would mean lied. كذب means denied. Wait a minute, let's look at this jump again. كذب would mean lied. كذب, rejecting, denying. يكذب, or actually, sorry, this is the past tense. كذب would be denied or rejected. يكذب would be denying or rejecting or refusing. كذب, deny, an imperative, you're asking him to deny. مكذب is the person that's rejecting or refusing. تكذيب is basically the rejection itself. Now let's move on. Any questions before we move on on box 25? I know this one was pretty easy, straightforward, but the meanings are some of those words that come frequently in the Quran. Those are probably the most important words and the most frequently used words. I would doubt really the numbering here. I don't think at all that is very accurate. I do believe that they appear a lot more than that. And just like when we did for Bashara, we had 70 times. Well, let's see Alima how many times. Alima, just the root Alima, here they said 42 times. The actual occurrences actually in the Quran is 165 times. Let's see the word kadhaba. The word kadhaba 160 times. Wow. So 160 times for alima and 160 times for kadhaba. All right, 165 times for alima and 160 times for kadhaba. Let's see for the word sabaha or sabaha. 24 times. Here they said 48, but I could see that it tells me 24. Let's go ahead and actually see another form, and let's see sadaqa. That's exciting to know. 36 times. Here they said 31. It's actually 36 times. Let's see sakhara. 26 times for sakhara. If they put, how many times did they put? 26 times. All right, let's go on with the box 26. Box 26, and let's see what we're finding. I can see that somebody has a question, so let's see what the question says. Very interesting. Oh, alhamdulillah. All right, let's move on, and we're going to do box 26. As we finish boxes, it becomes more exciting, and inshallah we'll be able to get really close to really doing the hands-on. The hands-on is the most exciting. All right, let's do it. فعل and فعل. So فعل and فعل. فعل and فعل. Let's see. And this is basically the root نبأ, and it actually comes from the root نبأ. نبأ. And all these, by the way, all these come from a root without the shadda. So nabba'a, the root is naba'a. Nazzala, the root is nazala. Najja, the root is najja. Wala, the root is waliya. And that's it. So those are the only ones. All right. So just keep informed. Just stay, just heads up that a lot of these verbs actually have another root. This is not the actual root. At least these words, they're not the actual root. Naba'a, which would mean naba'a, the root, which is even before this one. Naba'a. So naba'a would mean to inform someone, to declare, informed, but since it's in the past tense. Nabba'a, informed as well. The difference between naba'a and nabba'a is when you actually have the shadda, is that there was an actual process of information during that information in order to inform the person. Yunabbi'u, informing. Yunabbi'u, informing. Nabbi', inform. You're giving an order here. All right. Munabbi', is basically the person. Or another person is Nabi. Nabi would also be the person that is informing, but it more became alam. It more became that information that is given as a form of revelation. So for a Nabi, that is more of a revelation. The person that's giving a revelation, that's passing on a revelation. And not every person that is giving any information is going to be called a Nabi. So it became alam. It became, a specific description for a specific person, which is Nabi. But munabbi is the person informing. And by the way, the issue about naba is usually about more relating to future. All right, more relating to future. It not always, because just as in the ayah nabba'ani al-alimul khabir, it was really referring to the past, but more frequently used for the future. Tanbi'a is more, that's not frequently used, but it is more, naba is more frequently used as to mean information. So it actually comes from this one, and an-naba here, just with adding the al onto it, would mean that they're talking about the major event, the major event, and naba, the future event, the information. All right, naba is usually a major event. Naba and munabbi, and that's why when we look at munabbi, the person can be the sorcerer as well. Nazzala comes from the root nazala. In here, nazzala, you want to remember that the shadda would mean that there is a gradual process, at least in one of the ways of understanding the presence of shadda in a word. Nazzala, and in this situation, that revealed, or actually to send down, sending down, or reveal or sent down is more accurate than revealed, because a reveal is to do kashf. Kashf is different than nazala, because in tanzil, the actual tanzil, which is the adjective or the adverb of the root nazala. Nazala means to come down. So when we're talking about tanzil, the sending down, revelation that is being sent down. So that's why when we look at the word revelation, it doesn't really give the meaning and the meaning that the word tanzil comes from, because the word tanzil actually comes from the idea that something is sent from above to the bottom, from up to down. But the word reveal, as if something was hidden and then you're taking out all those murky sides to it in order for it to become apparent. But that's kashf. That's not tanzil. But I guess it became very common in English Islamic terms, in English Islamic terms, for them to use these words in order to bring about an understanding. But unfortunately, a lot of the terms are used. A lot of the terms are actually used, I would say, from a biblical aspect, and this is really dangerous, and many times people don't realize it. It really began with a biblical translation, and then it became something that Muslims, I would say, plagiarized, at least in the English form of it, to mean a specific thing, but it doesn't really give it the same exact meaning. So let's go on. And najja right here, najja would mean, the actual root is actually najiya. Najiya would mean to save, to rescue. All right, najiya, to save or to rescue or rescued. Since it's the past tense, yunajji, rescuing. Najji, you're asking him to rescue. Munajji is the person that's rescuing. Tanjiya, munajji is the person that's rescuing. Tanjiya is basically the rescue. Yeah, there you go, the rescue. Walla actually comes from the root waliya. Waliya. Waliya, waliya. Here it says to turn. It actually has many meanings. It doesn't mean to turn only, because the word waliya actually means, one, it can mean to turn. Two, it can also mean to control or to be in authority. Waliya, to be in authority. So walla here would mean that they turned, walla, turned, and yuwalli, walla, turned or put in authority. I know it's two different worlds, walla, to turn, and to put in authority. How can you put these two meanings to bring it into one thought? All right, so walla, you want to think of it as, well, to put in authority, meaning you're turning, you're transitioning somebody's responsibility from one side to another. So yuwalli, turning or putting someone in authority. To putting someone in authority. Walli, you're saying, walli, you're saying put someone in authority. Put someone in authority. Muwalli is basically the person that's putting in authority or the person that's turning their back. Tawliya is, or wilaya, there could be many masadar for it, because wilaya, another word which is the actual wilaya, which is the actual authority, or tawliya is the actual placement of, to put somebody in authority, to put somebody, in other words, placing somebody in authority, and which is where the word wali comes from. Wali, the guardian. The guardian also is another masdar, is also another adjective or adverb, wali. And now let's see the passive. Now, what does it mean? The passive, meaning the person that is doing that particular action is not necessarily indicated in the sentence. So فُعِلَ, يُفَعِّلُ, and مُفَعَّل. يُفَعَّل, مُفَعَّل. Those would be where the person that is doing the actual verb is not indicated. So here فاعل, يفاعل, يفاعل, فاعل, مفاعل, مفاعلة. Now, why did they bring this up right now? Well, I want you to look closely because they're now going to start a new type of patterning. A new type of patterning in where جاهد, يجاهد. Another type of patterning. فاعل, جاهد. But جاهد, قاتل, نادى, when the actual root is actually jahada and not jahada. This is not the root. Jahada is not the root. Jahada is the root. The a addition would mean that there is some mutual, there is some other person that is also performing, or there is some kind of a bilateral area that is happening here. So let's just see when we add that what it does to the verb or to the root, the actual root. قتل is the root. Let's just look at it. نادى, well, actually نادى, this is an irregular verb, so let's take it out. نافق, نافق. هاجر, the root is هاجر. All right, let's look at جهد, قتل, نفق, and هاجر. Let's see what that adding that to it does. جهد, جهد is basically to put an effort. To put an effort. To put an effort. جاهد, جاهد, جاهد is basically putting in an effort, but there is another area. There's some effort against another area. Let's go for قاتل. قتل, قتل, one person killing. قتل, to kill, killed. قاتل, there's another party that is fighting this person. All right, قاتل, they're here fighting together. نفق, نفق, to tunnel, to hide. All right, نافق, the person is hiding certain sentiments, certain feelings against another party, against another party. هجر, هجر would mean to desert, to leave, to migrate. But هاجر, هاجر, putting in an effort in where they're migrating, they're leaving, they're boycotting a certain group, which is هاجر, to separate. يجاهد, now let's go on and see how that was adding that there's another group. Now let's see, يجاهد, jahada is the root, jahada, to put an effort, يجاهد, يجاهد, putting an effort. In other words, putting an effort, struggling, making certain struggle. Jahid, jahid, this is the imperative form. Jahid, mujahid is the person that is putting the effort, and it more is frequent in the Quran to relate or to refer to those that are in the battle, but this is not always the case. Mujahid, mujahad. The difference between mujahid and mujahad, this would be, mujahid would be the person that's doing the actual effort. Mujahad, mujahad is against whom? Okay, so one is ism maf'ul and one is ism fa'al. One is referring to mujahad, mujahad, what is the effort done on? All right, let's see for qatala and qatala. Qatala, qatala, to kill or to fight. Qatala, qatala, and just a note, the word qatala does not always refer to actual killing per se. This is really important to keep in mind, because the word qatala, just the word qatala, actually occurred 47 times. Here they put 54, but 47 times. It is important to note that the word qatala and qital and muqatala in the Quran, many times it can also refer to some sort of disagreement that can go violent or less violent, or maybe just a verbal argument, etc. So we're looking at a number of different ways of referring to some kind of attention. قاتل, fighting or fought. قاتل, but there's always, there's, because the all right, because of the in the middle right here, that would mean that there is another party involved. قاتل. يقاتل, fighting. I'm just going to use the word fight because I can't think of any other English term, to give me the word qatala and qatala. And this is really important to mention, because at many times, no matter what word or terminology or term that you can use in English, it may not always give the actual meaning that the Arabic word has. The Arabic word, you could see there's that conjugation that is based on a specific meaning. There's a crude word, and then there it builds from it. But in English, that's not really the same, and that's why you can't really get an accurate translation in English or in any other language for the Quran. You would really have to go to the Arabic terms in order to really understand what the words are saying. قاتل, fight. مقاتل, the fighter. مقاتلة is basically the fight itself. All right, مقاتلة. نادى, to call out, to cry onto. نادى, or cried onto, because it's in the past. ينادي, basically calling someone. نادي, you're telling him, call on that person. مناد is basically the person. منادى or nida is the actual call out or invocation. It can also be invocation or reach out. نفقة, it is more referring to a tunnel. نفقة, or to hide something, to somehow cover. So نافقة, it's you're hiding certain sentiments towards a specific person, so you are doing some sort of hypocrisy. So نافقة would be that person is somehow relating with those people in a hypocritical manner, and it is more in where they're trying to show good feelings, but in reality they don't really have those feelings. نافقة, ينافق, I don't know what word you could use, but because in English I know منافقة would be hypocrisy, but what's the verb of it? منافق is hypocrite. نافقة, how do you say the verb of those words in English? Well, I don't really know, so I'll just leave it at that, because in English we'll just say a person is being hypocritical, was hypocritical, but we don't necessarily use the word hypocrite as a verb. There's no verb for it, at least to my knowledge. هاجر, deserted. هاجر, deserted. يهاجر, deserting. هاجر, desert. مهاجر is basically the immigrant. Okay, if you're leaving, deserting something, مهاجر, immigrant. مهاجرة is the actual مهاجرة or hijra really is the actual immigration. The immigration, not the immigration office, but the immigration, meaning the process of migrating. The process of migrating. And remember, المهاجرة المهاجرة is different than المهاجرة, because المهاجرة is the immigration itself, but المهاجرة are the people that migrated. That's why they used to say اللهم ارحم الأنصار والمهاجرة. المهاجرة, those that migrated to Medina. And here we go. So it's 1:57. We won't start with another box today. Next week, inshallah, we will be starting another box. We've got 27 and 28. Let's just see how long it might take us to probably go through all this. I'm really excited. Let's just see. And let's see. So this is 27, 28, and 30. Those are pretty straightforward, not much to them. So if we are to say we're taking 2 boxes, well, those are going to be really easy boxes. Those are easy boxes. Okay, so we might take 3 boxes one day, and 3 more boxes another day. And yep, so an estimation of probably 4 more classes, but then we'll be going the hands-on in where we're going to be taking a surah, and I chose surah either as-Saf or surah al-Shu'ara. The reason why surah al-Shu'ara, they're really short sentences, or surah al-Saf, because it doesn't have a lot of hard meanings and it's easy to get to. We'll be starting, inshallah. We'll be ending this packet in 4 more classes, so that's 2 more weeks, and then we'll be hands-on in the tafsir, in where we'll take a meaning and you guys will be going on the mic and trying to break down those ayat. I'm so excited. You will be getting tested. Just to make sure before we actually start breaking down those ayat, that you are already have mastered the packet and learned all the meanings. There will be a test. We will be sending it out, inshallah. The test, work on it and make sure that you got all the meanings. Make sure you listen to the video on YouTube, and inshallah, hopefully things will get easier. Any questions? Oh, alhamdulillah. Fatu, thank Allah barak fiki. Thank you so much. It really means a lot when somebody tells me that they like the class. It just helps me know that I'm on the right track and that people are understanding what I'm saying. Because for when a person is teaching a class, they could easily not recognize if the people are on the same page or whether they just got lost. So it does help to actually tell me that it's clear or not clear. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Otherwise, if not, we'll see you all in, I believe, 3 hours, inshallah. All right, so it seems like there are no questions. We'll see you all next week, or actually tonight, not next week. Tonight, well, in 3 hours. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.